Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. Before we jump into today's interview, please remember to subscribe to our channel. Really helps us grow our audience, etc. We appreciate it. Thank you. Today's interview, I just want to dive right in because the two guys in question are going to explain it way better than I ever could. It's Mark Pellegrino, who you will recognize from pretty much everything, movies, TV. This guy is busy and he's in some awesome stuff. And Andrew Rosso, who is a lawyer, professor, activist. This guy is busy. You're not going to recognize him from the screen. He's not an actor, but he's a very cool guy, very interesting. I really enjoyed talking to them. They came together to form something called the Guardian Project, which, to sum it up quickly, because I know I said we'd dive right in, is kind of asking for some accountability on the internet, which I can absolutely get behind. I don't really keep it a secret that I think social media is very toxic, etc., etc. I understand it has its purposes. I'm not against it. It's not evil. But I'm already rambling, so let's dive into the interview. Like I said, they'll explain it better than I could. It's very cool stuff. Hey everybody, Adam here. I'm sitting down with Mark Pellegrino and Andrew Rosso. I hope I got your name right.
You did.
Okay, great. And they're here with the Guardian Project. So, Mark, I'm sure a lot of people recognize you from your countless projects, which we could do a whole thing on. And Andrew, you're an attorney, activist, professor, so you guys are very busy. How did you come together for the Guardian Project?
Good question. Mark?
Sure, yeah. Andrew asked me to do a cameo for his anti-bullying site, Cyberbyte. So I did the cameo, and then he asked me for an interview. And so we did that interview for about an hour and then talked for about an hour and a half or so afterwards and discovered that we had a lot in common. We, even though we grew up in different eras, he's a young and I'm an old, and we sort of grew up with similar issues that led to similar experiences. And we have a similar passion for fighting against bullying, and decided to combine forces and jump on an ad hoc movement that was already going on in social media amongst my fans, take the name from that they had called themselves as protectors of my reputation, and apply it to a couple of different projects that we hope will make the internet a more civil space to have conversations in.
That's very cool. And for people listening who may not have heard of the Guardian Project, that's kind of your bird's eye view on the project?
Yeah, the Guardian Project, we put our heads together and decided that what enables this intersocial violence is anonymity. The victimizers can hurl stones from the crowd and then hide back in the mob without any consequences to their behavior, and the person they're victimizing is more of an abstraction to them. It's not a real person who has real feelings in a real life, and so hurting them has no meaning to them. And so we decided to take this issue of anonymity and attack it from various levels. And that one level is to make a TV show where we find people who are objectively proven to be victimizing somebody, where objective damages can be shown, and to bring some form of justice and or closure to the victim, and maybe even help to rehabilitate the victimizer if that's possible. If not, then hopefully bring some sort of retributive justice to the victim so that they can be compensated for whatever the victimizer has done to them. But that's just one level of taking anonymity away. Another one is we're hoping some legal reform and even talking to platforms themselves about objective rules and standards and universal verification. So multi-tiered attack on the problem of anonymity and internet violence.
And
for sure.
Privilege, anonymity is a privilege that people have abused. And I'm not sure if you've paid attention to the congressional hearings that, recently been going on with Mark Zuckerberg and, Jack Dorsey. But what's clear on a number of levels on both the legislative side and on, the side of the tech giants is nobody really understands how social media is creating these harms. On one front, legislators don't understand the law, but they don't understand how the platforms operate. Why? Because many of them are what we call digital immigrants. They did not grow up with this type of technology. They've kind of had to adjust, learn, adopt. And on the flip side, you know, the tech giants created this playground for everybody to play in, and they can only be responsible for so many things. And, you know, one of those things is making sure that it is a safe playground where if people want to play, let them play, but don't let anybody get seriously harmed, injured, you know. And that's kind of where we come in, is to try and create some sort of balance and provide that civil type atmosphere.
It's a big but very important endeavor, because there's so many ripples of the social media thing coming out, especially now, but they've been underlying problems for a long time.
Indeed, and once we went public with our Kickstarter, and a few of my prominent actor friends, started supporting the project, it brought the trolls out in force, because they see their future source of self-esteem being threatened. It may sound crazy, but there are people out there who get their source of self-esteem from ruining other people's lives, or at least their day. But if they can really ruin your life, they've done something pretty great as far as they're concerned.
It's a popularity contest. It's a measure of clout in a very sickening way, where if somebody, I'll use Mark as an example, if somebody gets Mark's attention, where Mark will respond, or another public figure will respond, retweet, that's brownie points, right? That's kudos to these types of communities of, I annoyed them so badly, or I did something so egregious but great for us that it pissed them off, that now they know who I am. And it's sick.
It is a weird kind of hierarchy that I guess didn't come out of nowhere, but it's not like social media was constructed with those ideas. At least I wouldn't think so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but according to some documentaries out there, though, the social media companies are aware that negative information flows more quickly, that lies are passed around more readily than the truth, and I think there's a degree of stoking those fires a little bit, because it's like clickbait. It keeps people on. Now, I don't buy the deterministic, outlook on people. I don't think people are zombies that are just, like a rat in a maze, responding to stimulus, base level stimulus. I think that we have free will, and we can opt out of the system if we choose. But there's definitely something to the idea that they're stoking the negativity, because it keeps you in the loop longer.
I think you're exactly right. That was actually my next question. Is I've read so many things about these apps being made to kind of like hit those pleasure centers in your brain with the instant gratification on things, but also that outrage leads to engagement, which leads to ad clicks, which is kind of their bottom line.
Yep.
And I was going to ask if you felt that was a big part of it, but clearly, yes.
I mean, I do think it's a big part of it, but then again, I don't think humans are rats, and I think we have the faculty of volition, and we can opt out. The less you're thinking, of course, the more you're just going to be living reflexively, and I definitely think that our culture and educational system reinforce an emotional reasoning, an emotionalized way of living, and an impulsive way of living over a rational way of living. So to some degree, maybe what I'm saying is not entirely true. So, maybe some people are just sucked in and they can't get out of the vortex because they haven't learned that they can think and remove themselves from that environment. But, and maybe that's something the social media companies are capitalizing on. I would like to think not. I would like to think we're free enough to just get off the platforms.
But look at the guy, look at the people that have created these platforms. Look at their age, look at their background, and digital natives. Zuckerberg, Dorsey. These guys had an idea, a great idea, brilliant idea, and found a way to connect the world. But in doing so, we always give up certain rights of privacy, right? Convenience will always trump privacy. So when we buy into the smartphones or these smart home assistants and then think nothing of the potential ramifications of it until after the fact, we don't think of these things. And that's just for, how we live our life and how dependent we have become on technology. That's normal. But at the same time, we all need to do a better job of understanding what we're buying into. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think at one time information was passed through establishment sources, and the laws sort of reflect that with respect to slander and libel and false narratives. Well, now everybody's a content creator. Everybody's a potential reporter. Everybody's passing news on. It's not gossip anymore that you're passing on. You're passing on information that then goes viral. It becomes a narrative. So we have to have laws that reflect the fact that people are content creators. People are journalists now. That person who decides to pass on a decontextualized tweet and create a narrative out of that is now a journalist. Mm-hmm. Because, it's not just their neighbors and friends and family who are seeing this bit of gossip that they're passing around. It's the world community. And that causes objective harm to somebody. I've just a mentor. I'm a mentor to a college student who had a professor who just committed suicide because of these very narratives that were stoked on social media, where hundreds of thousands of people decided that this person was a racist pig, though he's not. Mm-hmm. And they blocked his tenure, which he had to go to court for 7 years to reinstate. And then he was let go early because of this massive outpouring of hatred towards him. 99.9999999% of the people that were contributing to this massive viral feed had no idea who this person was. They had never taken a class from him. All of his students thought he was a stellar teacher. They were very connected. Well, after a while, all that pressure and negativity and no job to boot, the guy put a bullet in his head.
It does seem to be very rampant on college campuses. Does the Guardian Project work with, I'm guessing it works with people of all ages because it seems like a very large endeavor. Have you found that it's one generation or another that it's an issue, or is it just across the board?
That's
you want to answer? You want to answer from your perspective, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. And then Mark, I'll turn it back to you. That's an interesting question because you would think it would be just a younger generation. And at least in my experience, with practicing law and, the reputation management that I provide on the side, you would be surprised that these are parents too. These are adults and adults of, significant ages that for whatever reason engage and facilitate this behavior. In my perspective, it's across the board. I think what we're seeing is, the millennial generation. I don't know if it's the millennials, so to speak, that are really the major factor here. I think it's a lot more of the older generation who are a lot more conservative in whatever their views are, not just political, but just conservative, and have very different ideas of what's right, what's wrong, what's ethical, what's not. And, Mark, I don't know if you agree or not, but at least in mine, it just depends on what it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll experience it when you're in the out group, whatever that is. I think I've experienced it generationally. The latest wave of abusers was under 18. Almost all of them were somewhere between middle school and high school age. They were the worst because they're spouting a certain language that they're learning from school and from their peers, but they're motivated by a sort of the fame that they think they get from taking down a check mark or getting recognized by a check mark, and the followers they get by challenging the check mark. So it's a whole different type of bully than the social justice warriors who attack because they don't like your politics. They don't like the way you phrase things. And so they're the, eternally enraged church ladies that are just coming after you for turns of phrases. They're a far more sophisticated group They're still speaking the same language as the youngsters, but in a far more sophisticated way. And they're looking not just to get fame, but to actually create narratives to trap you so that they can capture a phrase in utero, so to speak, put it out there in the universe and pretend like that little phrase or clipped phrase represents who you are. And then they tag social media influencers and bosses onto this, and they start petitions against you. So the older, more sophisticated ones, it all comes out the same, right? But it goes generationally, and I do feel like the world we're living in is very tribal, and so if you happen to be an outlier from any of these particular groups, you're a potential victim.
That's for sure. Yeah. Even if you try not to play the game, you're ostracized in that way.
Yep.
One thing I was going to ask is, it seems like a chicken or the egg kind of question. I don't feel like people are all horrible by nature. Like if you meet a random person at the grocery store and you have a conversation face to face, it's going to be pretty amenable most of the time. So is it the negativity of social media that you think is amplifying this? I mean, obviously anonymity is a big part of it. Or do you think people are nasty by nature and put on a mask when they, not a bad pun in time of COVID, but do you think they put on a face when they go outside to be polite, to not get taken down in public? I mean, I'm probably phrasing the question wrong.
No, it's a good question.
I think, well, do you want to answer, Andrew?
Nope. Mark, go ahead, please.
No, I think we're in unique times. I think we have multiple generations raised up to not respect reason, and if you don't respect reason as a standard of measurement of reality, as a means of mediating disputes between people, if you only recognize emotions as your faculty of what is, your means of ascertaining what reality is, then you have no mediator between you and the world. You have no mediator between you and other people, and that creates unbridgeable gaps between people. And you'll just sort of coalesce around the groups that have your life experience, your sense of life, and everyone else will be an outsider who has to be attacked, and they can't be reasoned with. And so social media simply amplifies, in my view, a social cultural movement that's been going on for 50 some odd years, which has been increasing tribalization, as reason is saying bye-bye, as a means of knowledge, as a means of discovering the truth, as a means of interplay between human beings, and emotional reasoning takes over. We have these increasingly balkanized groups of people who are attacking each other, and they have now a facility to do it in social media. It's just easy now.
It gave them the tool.
This is a tool that amplifies, I think, something that's been happening for a while.
But it goes back to anonymity. It goes straight back to anonymity. In at least my generation, we don't know how to converse in person anymore. We don't know how to converse face to face or pick up a phone and just talk, right? It's text. It's these black mirrors, these screens that are the divide. And to your question, Adam, of, you walk up to somebody at the grocery store, I don't know if it's necessarily a mask. It could be in a way, but how likely are you as an individual to just go bonkers if you don't like a random conversation that's being had? Most of the time you're going to be like, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, you kind of keep it to yourself, and then you go and, bitch to somebody else right after, excuse my language, but you're going to go to a friend, a family member. Can you believe that this person said this to me today? Can you believe that I saw them wearing this hat, this shirt, right? You're never going to just say it to their face because of the potential consequences. So I think social media creates, this shield, or this false shield that nothing can happen to you. And it's not right. It's just not right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was.
And that's because nothing can happen to you. I mean, people are literally saying, "Go ahead, sue me. Go ahead." I had a friend who was destroyed by social media, lost his job, lost contracts because of false accusations of sexual harassment. He had cease and desist orders sent to the people who were the main harassers. They framed them, put them on their walls, and posted them on social media as badges, as Purple Hearts, as badges of achievement. What is that? That's somebody who has no fear that what they're going to do is actually going to have any real world consequence to them.
And I think that is a big part of the problem too, in the case where someone does accuse and then the person's found innocent or there's nothing to find. There's never, okay, well, now go back on the false accuser, and why would you say that? And now there has to be some there's nothing.
In this case, the false accuser confessed almost 2 years after the fact on social media and said the reason she did what she did was because she felt like she belonged to a group. And it was the first time in her life that she felt like she belonged to that, to something. And that's part of what motivates the younger set, is they feel like they are part of something. And it's important by virtue of the fact that you're attacking something bigger than you.
Well, it's that fear of missing out. It's that sense of belonging. And the problem is once somebody's reputation is on the line, it doesn't matter if you're proven to be innocent. It doesn't matter if you have all of the evidence right in front of you. The damage is done. People are still going to have that doubt and still look at you differently and continue to spill little narratives saying, well, yeah, I know, but it just, nobody would say that if it, didn't actually happen. There's all these narratives. It never really dies. And that's the problem. And when it comes to objective harm, threat of force, threat to murder somebody, there's no exception. There's no, okay, you violated our terms, this is strike one. No, that's strike three, you're off. And then there's some penalties for it because you've deliberately targeted another person to create harm. And it's no different as if you were there in person doing the same thing. And in the law, that's known as the effects theory, the effects principle.
I completely agree. Yeah. A lot of this seems to be based around social media, and rightfully so. It seems like you guys have gotten some decent traction and are getting the name The Guardian Project out there. Have you been able to talk to anyone from these giant social media communication companies about any kind of change, or are they just not having it?
Well, I haven't. I don't know if Andrew has, but I haven't. I know they're busy with Congress right now.
Yeah.
being grilled by Congress. I would like to talk to them because I think we offer a solution that's market driven and about reputation, as opposed to what Congress is doing, which is just trying to impose its control in one more area of human life and continue to drive a wedge between us and our private property. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the social media platforms can edit what the fuck they want. Excuse me, I use that word, but it's their property. It's their property, and that content can be whatever they want. And to me, the market will speak when they see Jack is editing information to tip the scales in one direction. Leave. If the guy's not proving to be a good faith operator, you have now several other platforms that you can go to. I think if we were to approach them and say, look, you have non-objective standards for deplatforming people. You have these algorithms that must be informed by some form of linguistics that lands unreasonably on one side of the political spectrum. And so as a result, especially with the New York Post, their attempt to edit the New York Post article most recently, people don't trust you. You claim to be a media platform that's editing content and people don't trust you. Now, I think that's okay. However, if you want to be trusted, then you should have an objective standard for what should be left out. Force, fraud, libels, slanderous, false narratives, things that cause objective harm to other people. That means ISIS and Hezbollah get deplatformed. That means the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran doesn't have a social platform anymore. all right, or that the North Korean party platform doesn't have a platform with you anymore because they literally stand for force and violence against other human beings. And you make that a universal construct, and now you won't be offending right and left by just simply enforcing your preferences, which you're allowed to do. But at least you'll have in the eyes of people who in the eyes of the outside world, you'll now have at least a veneer of respectability, which I think the social media companies are losing.
And with you know, a lot of these executives, you know, on a very limited basis, I work with certain people at Facebook and helping, you know, clients of mine for reputational issues get that verification, or if there are imposter accounts, I have, you know, with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram's help, can have them taken down upon providing the proper proof, images, screenshots, and threads. But if you were to ask any of them, you know, what gets you deplatformed? What's it going to take to get this person off? They don't have an answer because, as Mark said, there is not an answer. We'll know it when we see it, or, well, it just depends on it, you know, and this might be a little too political, but the Steve Bannon thing, right? Doesn't matter, you know, what side of the political spectrum you're on. If you threaten, you know, two individuals that for our purposes are considered to be reputable by national security, whether it's the director of the FBI or, you know, one of the top leading infectious disease doctors that's trying to help with COVID. We may not all like what's going on, but you can't put an open thread, even if it's, you know, got no backing. You can't do it because who's to say that somebody doesn't actually act upon that because, you know, Steve Bannon said it or somebody else said it. He may not be the one doing it, but putting those words, putting those ideas out there are dangerous. They're harmful to national security, to anybody. And the response, in my opinion, by, you know, Mr. Zuckerberg at Congress is like, well, you know, we removed the post. Well, great. What's it going to take to get him off? Well, you know, he's going to have to do that type of behavior again and again. Well, no.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion. I'm not speaking for Mark or anyone else. It's just how many strikes does somebody get when causing that type of harm? And I don't know.
That's part of the consistent rules that Mark was just talking about is someone might have one offense and they're gone forever. And it might not even be an offense depending on who you ask. Right. Other people are there forever. And it just doesn't make any sense. There's no consistency.
I mean, when they're letting a tweet from Ayatollah Khomeini implying that the Holocaust is fake, and you know, from a man who has threatened to incinerate all the Jews, and they let his account stand forever while silencing somebody like a Candace Owens because you don't like what she has to say. I mean, that's clearly not an objective standard. It's clearly unfair, and it's a jaundiced way to go about doing business. So I think we can make things a lot more fair.
Absolutely. Because they also like to walk that fine line of like, oh, well, that's their country's laws, their country's politics. We're a private company, and you can't have it both ways. You know, it's
correct.
It's an uphill battle, you know,
for sure. Especially the amount of users.
Yeah. And it's not an overnight solution what Mark and I are doing, but it takes somebody to get it off the ground. And I think, you know, with Mark and his name, he's done great work over the years, still continues to. Hollywood, Silicon Valley, all these industries have the ability and have individuals with the right amount of clout, the voice to join together. And, you know, I'm grateful, as I say all the time to Mark. You know, I grew up watching Mark on television. I love his work. I never thought I'd see the day where I'd be able to stand side by side with him and, in my opinion, give back to say thank you by helping carry out a mission that's so important to us. But that's what it takes, is people that you normally wouldn't associate with, not this idolizing, you know, actors, musicians, actresses, you know, whoever it is. Join together. There shouldn't be this divide between artist and fan or actress and fan to a certain extent with stuff like this. Why wouldn't we want to all join together in some respect? So it's a start, and we'll see what happens.
For sure. And a lot of this seems to go back to, it's something you kind of hear all the time in regards to online communications where people will claim freedom of expression, even if it's hate speech, which isn't claimed right. And it seems like everyone likes to invoke the Constitution when it supports them with no real understanding of what they're saying.
Right. What they don't understand is that the Constitution is a restraint against government. It's not a restraint against individuals. So you can't say anything you want to on my show. You can't say anything you want to in my house. You can't say anything you want to on my publication. That's what individual liberty means. I have exclusive control over my property. And as long as I'm not violating rights, which means using force against somebody, I can say what I please, and you have the power of editorial. You can turn me off if you want, and if I kick you out of my place or block you or mute you, I'm not violating your rights at all.
Exactly.
And I also take issue with the notion of hate speech as well. To me, I want objective rules. Objective rules. So when you spread false narratives about somebody and then link their employers to these false narratives in an attempt to destroy a person's livelihood, that's objective. And if that in fact happens as a result, there are objective damages to your livelihood. Hate speech is an attempt to subjectify, is a subjectification of law. So, and I don't think law should be open to interpretation of whoever happens to be behind the bench at the time or who happens to be deciding the case. Oh, yes, that is hate. Well, what's the metric? I don't, nobody knows what hate speech is. Hate speech now is, the concept of hate speech is, does it offend me? Yes, then it's hate speech. So offense is not a proper metric for damage. What's a proper metric for damage? You've destroyed my life. You've hurt me in some way. You've objectively harmed me. You've used lies to propagate something about me that has destroyed my reputation. That's objectively measurable. Hate isn't. Does it matter to me that the guy who murders me doesn't like white people? Really? Should his penalty be worse? Really? No.
Yeah, murder would be the issue there.
Yeah, it's just murder. It's murder. It's assault. It's rape. It's theft. Plain and simple. Leave the other stuff to our education system, and leave the other stuff to the way in which we process morals. And that, to me, that's an entirely separate matter and shouldn't be a matter of legality.
But you also have judges and people in positions of power making the sole executive decisions on subjects and topics that they have no understanding of, right? So a judge who doesn't understand social media because he or she isn't on it, doesn't use it, maybe the courthouse has their own accounts that they run. Why? I get that they're overseeing the case, but they should be able to consult with subject matter experts. Now, how does that go on? I don't know, right? And I know what I'm saying is unorthodox. It goes against the very legal principles that we're accustomed to today. But at the same time, you want people who are familiar enough, not necessarily qualified, but familiar enough to have a conversation on both sides and say, oh yeah, I know how Facebook works. It runs on advertisement. Not like, oh, well, how is it supposed to make money, if it doesn't collect, this, and this, right? You want that conversation and a minimal understanding. And if a judge doesn't understand it, he or she needs to have people there that can help consult, or at least somebody to help the jury. I don't know, but our laws need to change, and they're archaic. They need to be adapted because technology is growing. The laws were written at a point in time where it did make sense, because you don't know what you don't know, right? They based the laws off what the founding fathers knew. I'm sure they didn't intend to have it, be a universal for the end of time. Of course not.
Well, I think that here's where Andrew and I show our differences, because I think that, constitutional the principles that animate the Bill of Rights are eternal. I think those are not changeable. I think they're linked to human nature, and they're linked to the needs of human living in a social environment. And those don't change. What does change are particulars, how do you apply the concept of free speech and damages for people who are trying to hurt you to this atmosphere where everybody's a content creator? Well, that's a legitimate question, but the rights themselves still apply.
Right.
And the notions of protection still apply, I think, unless somebody can tell me different. I haven't heard anything extraordinarily innovative coming out of the legal or political world that makes me think that we've discovered some different orientation to rights now that deserves a complete rewrite of the Bill of Rights.
I agree.
Yeah.
This might sound a little bit like a loaded or difficult question, but for people listening, if they could do like one actionable thing, what would each of you like to see them do moving in this direction?
I mean, I think they should put the devil angel emoji with the guardians in their profile. And I think when if they have the stomach for it, because it takes a certain type of stomach, if they see somebody being viciously bullied online, protect them, stand up for them, circle the wagons around that person, and let that person who's being isolated and abused know that they're not alone, and let them know that the person who's abusing them is doing it because they need to dominate others to feel self-esteem. And then if you have the facts at your service, prove the other person's case publicly wrong. I mean, that's what helped me, is when people started coming in with the same old accusations, these people circled the wagons around me and showed how those accusations were all false. It doesn't stop them because they're not interested in the truth, but it certainly shut a number of them up.
No, it's similar to what you just said, Mark. I think on one hand, not being afraid to call somebody out for hurting somebody else. And in my personal experience just in recent weeks of me calling in certain individuals out because of their attempts to insult, abuse, disrespect others who don't agree with their views, is seen as bullying. There's a difference between bullying and calling somebody out for being disgusting, for being hateful, for being spiteful, for being just not fair to others. And to Mark's point, letting others know that, hey, you're not alone. Simply scrolling past something saying, oh God, this thread's, it's getting bad. That's awesome. That sucks for them. No, do something. If you have an opinion, stand up for it. So I think that's a big thing. And of course, by definition and nature of the beast, anybody who's defending somebody else, you're going to get brought into it at some point, right? You're going to get called the same names. You're going to get, people saying, how could you support this? How could you do this? You're just as bad, if not worse. It's just part of it. But don't be afraid to stand up, because not everybody's going to agree with you. Not everybody's going to like you. And it's hard to digest at times.
I also think that people need to start looking at conversations differently. I feel like the intense tribalization and emotional reasoning that's going on there is making people argue with caricatures of the other person as opposed to the actual other person. They're setting up straw men, and then they're attacking the straw man as if that straw man is the person they're talking to. Everybody's a caricature. I made a lot of enemies on Facebook through the election because I was bashing the crap out of both the left and the right because they were making caricatures of each other and then acting as if those were real people on the left and the right. Mm-hmm. And every time I saw that caricaturization of the opposition, I had to say something about it. So look, think twice before you send that tweet. Think, are you really conversing with another person? Are you talking past them? Are you talking with a caricaturized version of them? Think about what you're doing. You have a moment. You could be like Ben Franklin, who would write letters in a rage to somebody, read them over, and then burn them or not send them, put them away in a drawer.
Right.
You could do that with a tweet if somebody makes you mad enough, but then you can put it away and no one's the wiser for it. And the social media environment is better for you not venting your spleen on somebody else. So, I mean, look, if you're on the left, all the people on the right aren't fascists, idiots, redneck, toothless idiots, fools. Some of them are quite intelligent, and the same goes with the right. are with the left and the right's perspective of them. They're not all dipshits, you know? So actually look at each other as human beings who came to your conclusions for reasons. And how about being curious about the other person? You know, there's a guy named Stephen Covey who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the effective habits of communication is seek first to understand, then be understood. How much better would the world be if we just put that into practice?
And reading. There's always two sides to a story, no matter what. Okay. There may be similar versions, but you know, devil's in the details. So before responding to a tweet or a message, look up. Read the whole thread. See, how did we get to this point? Why are people jumping on this other person? Well, let's go back to the original message. It may be pages worth, but get caught up and do your own diligence, because to just jump on board with something without having any context, which is what a lot of people today do with, you know, this era of misinformation and news, it creates problems. And there's no reason, as Mark said, ask. It's okay to be curious. Why do you feel that way? Why do you believe that? I disagree. I think, you know, your argument's misplaced, but why? And people don't care about the why. They just say that you're wrong. I don't care how you got there, but you're wrong.
Or they see something that immediately appeals to their prejudices and they pass it on and it becomes viral instead of checking it out for themselves.
It's all echo chambers.
It is echo chambers. My God.
Wonder why people drink.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is exacerbated too by everyone stay in your house and don't see people in real life. It just amplified it all recently.
For sure.
We need to be peaceful. We need to bring, you know, love and health back into the equation. You know, our whole world, at least the US, we're all in the same boat right now. We're all susceptible to this epidemic. We all have felt what it's like to quarantine or isolate. We've all felt those feelings. We're no different than each other. Everybody right now, for the first time in I don't know how long, has something in common together. We all feel together, and there's no reason why we should be more alienated than ever. This pandemic should have united everybody on either side to come together to fight. And people are still trying to figure out and wishing death on one person, saying you suck over there. Like, why? Mm-hmm. No reason for it.
Yeah, in the beginning, I felt like there was kind of this sense of we're all in this together, and it lasted about a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where can people find you guys online, find the Guardian Project, and support it?
For me, you can find me on Mark R. Pellegrino on Twitter, at Mark R. Pellegrino. And on Instagram, MarkRossPelle. That's Mark Ross Pelly on Instagram.
And then I am on Twitter, Rosso, ROSSOWESQ, and on Instagram, CyberGuyESQ. And both Mark and my profiles link to the Guardian Project social media handles. And, you know, we try to, for those people that reach out, because a lot of people do, we try to answer them, because that's, as we've just said, is people are curious. They're going to have doubts. They're going to have questions. How can you do this? How do you anticipate doing all this? Are you doing it alone, right? Those are good questions, and they deserve answers. And even if we can't give them full answers, they deserve a response. So we try to answer everybody as best as we can. And that's the best way, is putting that idea in people's heads and getting people to converse. And, you know, we hope to get this project funded, but if for some reason that, because of fighting the good fight and tackling the trolls, that we're unable to get funded initially, that's okay, because there's so many different aspects to this, and our message and name are still getting out. So to you, thank you, Adam, for helping us get it out.
Well, thank you guys for taking the time. I think this kind of stuff, especially in regards to social media, is a very important conversation not enough people are having, so we're happy to help.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Well, you guys take care, and good luck with everything. Keep pushing. I'm sure it gets difficult at times, and shouldering it all, but it's important work, and hopefully there's some change on a global scale with this stuff.
Let's hope so. And let's hope it comes from the private sector, not Congress pushing their fingers into everything.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need more of that.
No.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
I urge everybody to check out the Guardian Project on Twitter or on Instagram. Look them up, read about them. Mr. Pellegrino and Mr. Rosso, thank you again for taking the time to come onto the show. I really had a great time talking to you. I would love to do it again at some point. And Mr. Pellegrino's, Mr. Rosso's, and the Guardian Project's socials can all be found in the show notes of the video. Once again, thank you for watching. Once again, please remember to subscribe to our channel. Like I said, it really helps us grow our audience, and you can give feedback so we can gear things more towards what you want to see. Please be sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, and more. Like I said, we love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All of our accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes.